going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us for this informational session, this webinar on the Iowa Forest Reserve Program. We have a few more folks, I'm sure, that will be joining us shortly, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. Here's our agenda for today. I'm going to give a brief overview of Trees Forever and then move right into the Forestry Reserve Program history and basics. We're going to have Mary Ellen Miller, president of the Iowa Nut Growers Association, share with you her experiences signing up for the program back in January of 2022. Then we're going to turn it over to Bailey Yotter from the National Wild Turkey Federation for some great information on cost share opportunities. I was able to record that presentation with her just about a month ago. So stay tuned for some great information on how you can access some of those cost share opportunities. First, just a quick recap of Trees Forever in case anyone is not familiar with the organization. Our mission is to plant and care for trees and the environment by empowering people, building community, and promoting stewardship. We were founded in 1989 and have over 30 years of award-winning programs that we've been delivering, from working watersheds, buffers, and beyond in our Illinois Buffer Program to community forestry with our partners at the utilities. Since that time, we've planted over 3.4 million trees with a staff of roughly 20 spread out throughout Iowa and Illinois. Okay, so before we get too deep into the presentation, I want to highlight a couple of documents. This is where most of the information being presented here today comes from. These are available as handouts in the GoToMeeting dashboard under handouts. And the first one here is from 2006, I believe, from Iowa State University, that outlines some of the basics for the Forest Reserve program. And again, this is something that is in that handout section for you there. Then the next document, this is a really nice reference document put together in 2007, again, with the basics of the program, but also including some benefits of the program, some totals for 2007, and then some survey results that we actually might see later on here in the webinar. Now, it is a little bit dated, admittedly, but it really packs a lot of good information into it. So that's why I wanted to recommend it, because it is a really nice reference document. Finally, the last document, and this is the actual form that the landowner fills out to submit to the county assessor. Some great documents to really help you understand your situation, and then eventually, if you do decide to enroll, the form itself, what you're going to have to fill out to actually get the enrollment process started. And then one final resource that I want to mention, because it is amazing in the information it provides. This is the Iowa DNR Forestry Forest Action Plan. And here's the link here, and then what it looks like when you arrive at the website. So scroll across the top to the tab that you want to know more about, and then you can scroll down to the topic and click. And so the private lands tab is where you would find information then on the left-hand column there about the Forest Reserve Program, amongst other things you can see there. You can get information on forest management plans, REAP, the Resource Enhancement and Protection Fund, and some things like that. Okay, so let's get on with it and dive into the history of the Forest Reserve Tax Credit. So in 1906, the Iowa legislature passed the Forest and Fruit Tree Reservation Act, more commonly known as the Forest Reserve Program. And this is a property tax incentive program to encourage landowners to protect forest land from conversion into agricultural land. Now, the original purpose of the program was to, and I quote, reduce or eliminate property taxes to induce landowners to hold their poorer lands in timber, not only as a source of farm income, but also for erosion control, watershed protection, and game cover. And so the economic gain allowed relates to products of trees. So think of logs, firewood, seed, fruit, nuts, Christmas trees, and greenery, I guess you could say, posts, poles, pulpwood, and even tree sap. All of that would be included in economic gain that's allowed. So in order for land to be eligible for this tax incentive program, it needs to meet the following criteria. So let's get down to the basics. At least 2 contiguous acres in size and generally not less than 66 feet wide. Now for the fruit tree reserve, it needs to be 1 acre or larger, but not over 10 acres in total area. It shall not contain less than 200 growing trees per acre. Now for the fruit tree reserve, and you need to have at least 40 apple trees per acre and at least 70 other fruit species per acre to qualify there and to maintain eligibility. In forest reserves that are artificial groves, the willows, the box elders, the other poplars that make up the windbreak portion of the area can be included when protecting borders do not exceed 2 rows in width around a forest reserve, or when used as a nurse crop, or pardon me, as nurse trees. And again, that is not to exceed 100 plants on each acre. So a few common questions here. Oh, I didn't keep up with my slides there, sorry there. So a few common questions, if the area has to be fenced, and the answer is it does not. Another question is if you can lease the acres for hunting, and you cannot. The other thing is no cattle, mules, horses, sheep, goats, or hogs are permitted on the forest reserve area. Then no more than 20% of the total number of trees in the forest reserve may be removed in any single year, unless, of course, the trees die of natural causes. So think of like EAB and things like that. When the number of trees falls below the 200 tree per acre threshold, then the owner needs to restore the number of trees to get it back up to at least that 200 trees per acre threshold. Finally, if any buildings are standing on the area that's being exempted, then 1 acre of that total area is going to be excluded from the tax exemption. However, the exclusion of that acre will not affect the areas meeting the overall acreage requirement. So those are kind of the basics of what it takes to be eligible and then maintain your eligibility for the Forest Reserve Tax Credit Program. Up next, we're going to have Mary Ellen Miller, who is the Iowa Nut Growers Association president, provide some perspective on her experience enrolling in the program. She did this in January of 2022, so this is about a year ago, and this is a recorded presentation that we're going to hear from Mary Ellen on. And that's going to be followed up then by a presentation, Bailey Yotter with the National Wild Turkey Federation. Bailey's going to share with us some cost share options for some rural landowners. And so that again is a recording that we recorded here just about a month ago. So some good information there if you're interested in some different management opportunities and cost share opportunities to go with that management. So without further ado.
Thank you, Jeff. Glad to be here. Yes, this last January, I finally decided to look into how to put some of my woodlands into the reserve. I had actually just chosen not to do that because I didn't have that many acres. I did have about 10 acres that I put into a forest improvement project that was underway. So one of the processes, first of all, because of COVID, I wasn't too willing to go to the assessor's office. And a friend of mine in another part of Iowa had the same concern, and she told me she was able to do it by email. My assessor was a little resistant at first, but I told him, try it and let's see if it works. So I was successful in getting the application form by email that I completed. One of the things you've got to remember is there is a once a year opportunity to apply, and that is just during the month of January. So you need to have it in by the end of January. Next slide, Jeff. So what I got was a one-page application form. Jeff showed that earlier, and in a little bit, he'll bring it up again. But you will also get an aerial map of your area. So when you go in, of course, he will have that right there. What he had to do for me was go into his files, and all of this is now digital, and he'll send that to you. And so you then take that map and draw with a magic marker the area that you want to put in reserve, and then he calculates that again using a software package as to how many actual acres you're putting in. I still have not received my actual acreage count. He told me that he has until April 1st to finish those applications. And when I did go into the courthouse recently to vote, I stopped by the assessor's office and asked when would I know, and he held up a very fat folder of applications just from this year. My understanding is it will appear on my next year evaluation, so the taxes I'm paying right now won't be affected, but the next time they send out the tax statement, those will be on it. The exemption is continuous. You don't have to reapply, and if you sell the property, it stays until you take it off. So next slide, Jeff. So here is the form, pretty basic, not a lot that you really have to be concerned about here. And again, he will let you know the number of acres from it, but you'll have to answer, are there any buildings? Are you applying for just forest, or are you also applying for fruit tree? But again, very minimal information to go in. So I completed this, sent it back by email, scanned the map as well. So it was a very simple process. So what are the questions that a lot of people have is, well, how much is this exemption? And it does vary by county. So right now, the current data that we have shows that statewide, we have a bit over 640,000 acres that are valued at $205 million. This will vary across the state. So these are just averages. Currently, the average is about $7 an acre in tax value. So statewide, that translates to about $4.5 million. What does that mean? That means the counties aren't getting that $4.5 million or that $7 an acre that they would if you didn't apply. The average property tax reduction is estimated to be $41,000, about $42,000 for the county total. So we're talking maybe the equivalent of maybe one employee, possibly. If Iowa had to, however, if we didn't have this available and we wanted to protect our trees, there would be the option possibly of looking at the CRP, which rents ground from landowners to prevent them from cropping it. If we did that instead of this reserve, that could amount to over $67 million a year. So it may seem like it's costing our counties some money. Yes, it does. But compared to other possibilities available to protect this land, a pretty cheap alternative.
To learn more and the steps that Mary Ellen took to register her property for the Forest Reserve Program, contact her at the email below.
Again, this is Bailey Yotter. I work with the National Wild Turkey Federation in a partnership position with the Natural Resource Conservation Service in Southeast Iowa. So I cover 24 counties in Southeast Iowa, and I do work very similarly to what the district foresters do with Iowa DNR. My job is just centric around USDA Farm Bill programs. So I have a little bit of experience with helping folks get cost share assistance.
Sure. So Iowa is primarily owned by private landowners. While it may be a small portion of the state's total landscape, 81%, and I think you could find documents that argue that that might be closer to 90% today of Iowa's forest is owned by private landowners. I think it's really important to take that into consideration. for the future of Iowa forests and how we manage them. In just a 5-year period, according to this slide, we've lost 122,000 acres of forest in this state. So something to really think critically about, and what, if you are a forest landowner, what you can do to promote the resource. And here's just another illustration of that forested cover in the state and what we've seen as a trend across the state with a steady decline, starting at settlement, of course, for whatever purposes they needed to build their farmsteads and railroads and things like that. We did see some increase in the early 2000s. I'm guessing we can probably attribute that to the CRP program, and also farmers just not being able to get into smaller crop fields because equipment started getting larger, and we're kind of staying steady with the millions of acres of forest that we see in the state today. But certainly we would like to increase that if possible. So just a little bit about me. I'm Bailey Yotter. I work down here in Southeast Iowa, covering 24 counties in the state as a resource to private landowners. I work via the Natural Resource Conservation Service in those 24 counties, just providing technical assistance to landowners across that area. And of course, you always will have your district foresters through the Department of Natural Resources that are available to you. But it's always a good start to go to your USDA service center and find someone to talk to there, and they can point you in the direction of who you need to talk to. And there's a variety of resources online, particularly the Iowa State Extension Forestry website that Dr. Billy Beck has recently updated and created a very nice platform there to find consultants and other folks who are available to talk to you about your property. And here is just more information about that. Simply Google, if you wish, Iowa State Extension Forestry, and if you click the contacts portion of that page, you can select your county and find the resources that are available to you. So there's a few different programs that the state of Iowa offers. One of the more popular programs is the state cost share program, the Resource Enhancement and Protection Program, better known as REAP. This is a great way to get started doing work on your property because it comes with very little red tape. If you are new to the game and just getting started, just purchased a property, or just recently got interested in doing some work on your property, this is a good place to start. There's a number of different practices that you can implement, including forest stand improvement, whether that's through crop tree release or removing undesirable understory trees. But also we offer financial assistance to for tree plantings and windbreaks. The nice thing about this program, again, is that it's relatively little red tape. You simply go to your soil water conservation district and submit an application. Once the application is submitted, the conservation commissioners within that district will vote to approve of the project. And once you find out from them whether or not your project has been approved, you can move forward with the work. This is a reimbursement program, which is a little bit different from the federal programs that I'll get into, but this reimbursement program is has a set amount of or an upper threshold of what you can spend, and this slide indicates what some of those price points are. And if you spend X amount of dollars, they'll refund you for those expenses. On the flip side of the, well, let's talk a little bit more. Refunding should be pursued through your district forester or me, or you could probably work with many other entities. It's just finding the appropriate person, and a good place to start is to work with your soil water conservation district to determine what program is best for you and what steps you need to do to move forward with that project. And again, this is just kind of encompassing what I've already discussed with you. Once the project is completed, you turn in all of your bills, and that will be reimbursed at the set rate that was determined by your soil water conservation district. Again, this is a very predictable program. It's more than likely to get funded. However, it's something that you know, you need to be working with and communicating with the soil water conservation district to determine if funds are available. And they are renewed each summer, and there are periods of time when more funding could become available. However, it's best to talk with the conservation assistant associated with your office to determine if resources are available. Now I'll talk a little bit more about the federal programs. Through the Natural Resource Conservation Service and the Farm Service Agency, we offer a number of different programs that are beneficial to landowners. A little bit different from the state cost share program, which is a reimbursement program. I like to consider this financial assistance. So these are flat rates that are predetermined before your enrollment. And once you enroll into the program, that rate is reimbursed to you whether you spend that much or not. So flat rate financial assistance versus a reimbursement program. And generally, you can see somewhat better price points for the federal programs. The kind of downside of all of that is it's going to take a lot more time for you to get that funding. At times, you'll see as long as a year to get funds for those programs, but I promise it's worth the wait if it's of interest to you. So the more popular ones are the Conservation Reserve Program, which is administered by the Farm Service Agency. And the two most popular for the Natural Resource Conservation Service are Conservation Stewardship Program, CSP, or the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, which we affectionately refer to as EQIP. The bottom two are a little bit more challenging to be a part of. RCPP, or the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, is limited to certain areas, and that's something that NRCS partners with an entity who has a vested interest in an area, and there are specific funds that are administered to an area based off some kind of objective or resource concern. And the easement program is generally exclusive to floodplain areas. Areas along the Iowa and Cedar River have plenty of these easements for you to look into. And that's something that I would encourage if you have a property that's adjacent to a primary watershed, like a major river system like the Iowa or Cedar or Mississippi, to talk with your office and see if you're eligible for that program. Now, the Conservation Reserve Program, again, this is administered by FSA. This is something that you would need to talk with your Farm Service Agency to see if you are eligible. Now, you have to have owned the property for 1 calendar year to be eligible for the program. The other thing about that is that 4 out of the 6 years that are of concern for that particular farm bill had to have been farmed in some way. So if we're talking about current enrollment periods, there needs to be known crop history for 4 out of the 6 years between 2012 and 2018. Now, this is subject to change when a new farm bill is released here in 2024. If we find that may change years for the years of concern as far as cropping goes, but as long as people are reporting crops to FSA during 2012 to 2018, you are eligible for cost share, potentially right now through the CRP program. And that's one that I work with. Again, it's most important to talk to the Farm Service Agency first to review your eligibility. And once you've determined whether or not you're eligible, then you can go to the Natural Resource Conservation Service and kind of discuss different practices that are available through that program. And I won't get into the nitty-gritty of that, but of the different practices, but more than likely there is a practice out there that will fulfill whatever you're hoping to achieve on that ground. Next, we'll talk about NRCS programs, starting with the Conservation Stewardship Program. This is really primarily a program that is designed to reward folks who have shown good stewardship on their ground historically. And we like to use this program for folks who have already utilized different programs, whether it was the state cost share or other federal programs, to do work on their property. This is a 5-year program that you would be committing to. And basically, through the program, there's a financial incentive to do that. That's kind of a, hey, thank you for being a great steward of the land. Here is a financial payment to you to thank you for the hard work that you've done in the past. And on top of that, there's additional work that we would require to enhance the programs that the practices that you've already worked with. So if you've used REAP funds to do a forest stand improvement project on your property, we would find a compatible enhancement to that forest stand improvement work that you've already done that's going to make it even better. And so kind of prior to CSP is kind of for the graduates of our program. So you've already used a program, so then we would push you towards CSP to make it even better. But prior to that, we would generally recommend either REAP or EQIP or the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And the nice thing about EQIP versus REAP is that you're able to marry practices together. With REAP, you can only use one practice on an acre of ground, but through EQIP, you're able to stack practices. So if you wanted to do both a prescribed burn and a forest stand improvement on the same acre, you could get both financial assistance for this forest stand improvement work and the prescribed burning work. And I like to say with this program that, you know, if you can kind of think of a practice that you want to do, we probably have something compatible to help offset the cost for that. And here we have listed just a few of the different practices that are available to you through that program. Personally, this is where I like to get started with folks. While it does take a lot of time to get financial assistance in the bank, if you will, the nice part about that is it gives you plenty of time to kind of mull over exactly what you want to do on the program, and it allows that kind of compilation of different practices on the same acre. And oftentimes to treat a resource concern or something that is bothering you on the property, it takes more than one practice to accomplish that goal. So that's kind of all I had today.
Well, excellent. We want to thank Bailey for providing that wonderful information. It certainly is very informative and some good options for landowners. And a good thanks to all of our presenters here, Mary Ellen Miller, Bailey. Again, those recordings really helped us out to be able to bring that information to you all. So questions is where we're at now. And so I do have some questions lined up here, I believe. And let's see. Does anyone have any experience with the tax exemption applying to homeowner association common areas? I live in a development that has about 10 acres of common area timber. All of the residents hold an equal undivided interest in the area as tenants in common. It's not clear um, if this would qualify or how the exemption would be applied at all. Well, that's a great question, John, and I am not entirely sure the answer of it. I think that's one that you might have to reach out directly to your county representative to maybe ask about. Um, Interesting. Some information here from Andy. There's a new bill in the Iowa Senate that modifies the taxation of the forest and fruit tree reserve program. Can you explain if that will have significant impacts on forest landowners enrolled in the reserve program? Well, that's a great question, Andy, and the ultimate answer is I can't, because I don't know entirely whether that's going to be retroactive, if it's essentially going to be going forward for new enrollees. I'm not entirely sure what those specifics of that one are. This is something that has been brought forward for many, many years, either an attempt to completely roll back this opportunity for rural landowners, forest rural landowners, or to modify it in some way to make it less of a threshold, not a threshold, but less of an exemption from the 100%. I wish I could provide some more information, but I can't. But stay tuned because there may be an opportunity as we go down to the Capitol next week. Monday on the 27th, we're going to be rallying down at the Capitol to educate our legislators on a lot of the benefits that trees provide. And so maybe we can get some additional information if we're down there. If anybody is interested in joining us down at the Capitol, we're going to be there from roughly I think it's 10 until 2. Stop by the Trees Forever booth, say hi to all of our friends from the Iowa Woodland Owners to the Iowa Nut Growers Association, as well as others. It'll be nice to see some familiar faces. Okay, another question here from Scott. I'm interested in hiring someone to remove box elder trees from my CRP ground in northeast Iowa that was planted with good trees 10 years ago. Who does that kind of work? Well, that might be a contractor that you could access through Billy Beck on the Iowa State Extension, Woodland Extension website. That might be a possibility. I know that the Tallgrass Prairie Center has a really nice document for contractors. I don't know if they're specific to trees though, but they do have some contractors that would work in relation to some of your government acres, some prairie acres. So that might be an opportunity as well, Scott. I would check out the Tallgrass Prairie Center at UNI, and they have a document that has all sorts of nurseries as well as contractors that can help establish or maintain various projects. So that would be a great opportunity to learn more there. And a question here from Anne says, what happens if you sell forest preserve in less than 10 years? That's another great question that I'm not entirely sure if I have the answer to that. Incidentally, if anybody else in the group happens to know the answer to this question, would you be willing to chime in? So my understanding is that, as Mary Ellen said, the exemption is transferable. So if you sell the forest preserve, it's going to move with that to the new owner. And then, of course, if that new owner didn't have the required trees per acre, then, of course, they would need to either get to that level of trees per acre, or then they wouldn't have the exemption any longer. Any thoughts from others?
Jeff, you are correct.
Oh, thank you, Mary Ellen.
that the reserve application stays with the land even when it's sold. It stays until someone removes it.
Okay, great.
Jeff, I would like to jump in if I may.
Sure, sure.
You mentioned that periodically there are attempts to remove this tax credit. We have a coalition of tree groups that pay for lobbyists to be at the Capitol to protect our interests. I just this morning attended a subcommittee meeting on Senate Bill 1129. I'm told there's another bill, maybe 1125, that also has in it attempts to remove this tax credit. This is sort of an annual exercise at the Capitol, and so far we have been successful in maintaining this tax credit, which has been in existence over 100 years. However, what I heard this morning was not too encouraging. It sounds like this is a real earnest attempt, if not to totally take away the tax credit, to reduce it in somehow. So I urge everyone on this webinar to contact your local legislators. They need to hear from you that you consider this a real value to your woodlands. So let them know to keep this tax credit as it is.
Well, thank you for your thoughts there, Mary Ellen. Absolutely, it's something that's always a constant battle down at the State House, and I always just think back to our forefathers who had the courage and the boldness to put forward the legislation to begin with because of what they saw as a real need, keeping ag land, forest land being converted to ag land. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Mary Ellen, we're going to be having the Iowa Nut Growers Association annual meeting coming up here on April 29th down at Prairie City, Iowa at the Neil Smith Refuge. So if folks are interested in getting nutty, come and join us down there. We always have a great program. We have a silent auction, a potluck. It really is a lot of fun. If you're interested in hazelnuts, the Iowa Nut Growers Association is hosting, Trees Forever is going to be there with a display, the Upper Midwest Hazelnut Growers Conference coming up here March 3rd and 4th. So just about 10 days away in beautiful Decorah, Iowa, up in northeast Iowa. We're going to have about 100 folks from Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, the Dakotas, even Canada, coming all the way down to go nuts and talk about hazelnuts. So more information on the Iowa Nut Growers Association website, and you can register at the Trees Forever events page. With that, I think we'll wrap things up. Stay warm, stay safe, everyone, as we get a little bit of winter weather here. Old man winter's not done quite yet, but I've got spring fever, that's for sure. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.